This hearing will come to order. Good morning. Next week, Americans will honor our nation's veterans who have paid the price for our freedom in times of conflict and served as our shield in times of peace. As we will learn today, one issue that calls for our immediate action is to fight a newer enemy facing our veterans, and that is those relentless con artists who seek to rob them of their life savings and defraud them of the benefits that they have earned in service to our country. In one recent case, the con artist operating out of Michigan was convicted of stealing nearly $200,000 from 36 victims who thought they were donating to charities benefiting veterans. Not only did the veterans never see a dime of this money, the fraudster added insult to injury by stealing the victims' personally identifiable information to commit identity theft. Fortunately, through the very good work of the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, this criminal is now behind bars. Veterans and their families have a right to expect that the nation they served will fight to protect them from unscrupulous individuals. As the AARP says in its bulletin, they protected us. Now it's our turn. We will hear from Inspector Carol Harris, the acting inspector in charge of the Communications Governance and Strategy Group at the United States Postal Inspection Service. Inspector Harris is also a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserves who served in Iraq and Kuwait and was awarded the Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal. He now leads Operation Protect Veterans for the Postal Inspection Service and will discuss its efforts to combat fraud targeting our veterans. Inspector Harris.
Good morning, Chairman Collins, Ranking Member Casey, and members of the committee. Thank you for holding this hearing on veteran-related scams. My name is Carol Harris. I'm the acting inspector in charge responsible for communications within the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, the law enforcement, crime prevention, and security arm of the Postal Service. I started my career in government service when I joined the Marine Corps in 1990. I served 10 years of active duty, including combat duty in Iraq. I continue to serve as a Marine Corps reservist. According to a recent AARP survey, veterans are twice as likely to unknowingly participate in a scam as compared to the general population. The survey also found that the vast majority of veterans encounter scams that have been tailored just to them. These would be veteran pension buyouts, fake vet charities, and scams that offer special access to veterans' benefits but for a fee. In these cases, the scammer makes it appear they represent a government agency or veteran organization, or claim that they themselves served in the military so they can create a sense of affinity. Imposters like these know that members of the military have been trained to rely upon and to trust other service members and to honor the bonds of service. Another finding from the survey found that veterans experience post-traumatic stress at a rate more than double the general public. It can be extremely difficult for a veteran to recognize when their otherwise good judgment has been temporarily clouded by what an experienced fraud operator is selling. In one case, postal inspectors investigated Gina Palacini, led vets to believe she was a certified advisor affiliated with the Department of Veterans Affairs. She told older veterans she could boost their pensions by making it appear they had fewer assets than they really did and could then qualify for greater government assistance. She also offered to reinvest her clients' money in financial products that she would control, but Palacini failed to warn them she was jeopardizing their benefits with clever moves like these. In reality, the fraud operator never reinvested the money on the veteran's behalf. She simply took the money and spent it on herself. That is, of course, until she landed in jail. In another case, a fake charity led people to believe their donations would help disabled and paralyzed veterans, especially vets who were vulnerable to suicide. Mr. Foreman, another witness here, received one of their solicitations in his mailbox. He generously gave. His donation never went towards helping anyone but the scammers who have been referred to the Department of Justice for prosecution. In 2017, AARP and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service launched Operation Protect Veterans. Since that time, we've been sharing tips on how vets can safeguard their assets and protect their personal information. With the help of veterans organizations, libraries, senior centers, and more than 30,000 post offices across the country, we distributed these customized brochures and surveys. Survey has served two important purposes. First, it's a means for veterans to tell us what kinds of scams they're seeing. But more importantly, by filling out the survey and returning it, it's raised their awareness. Even more, we believe it's boosted their immunity to fraud. When postal inspectors are asked, how can consumers stay safe financially, we tell them, just remember to stop and talk. If you receive a request to invest money or pay a fee or collect a prize or send money to someone you've only known online, find a friend before you reach for your wallet. People who operate fraud schemes are successful because they are persuasive and because they've convinced us to keep it a secret. Why? Because scams only work when we're isolated from the people we know and trust at any age, but especially after we retire. We all need to make sure there's an extra pair of eyes on the decisions we make about our money. We need a trustworthy friend or a family member we can talk to. In the military, we refer to this person as our foxhole buddy. We like to say, I've got your six. Think of the hands of the clock facing forward at 12 and backward at 6. I've got your six is another way of saying, I've got your back. When I was in a foxhole, my buddy was the person I trusted to be my eyes when I couldn't see, and I did the same for him. My buddy literally was up when I was down, and when he was down, I was up. I use a lot of military jargon. I grew up in a household where it was used freely. My father served in combat in Vietnam, and my grandfathers served in World War II. Service, honor, and duty were household terms used daily. When the Postal Inspection Service launched Operation Protect Veterans, I shared this brochure with my dad. I told him, Dad, you have me to talk to about money matters. But not everyone has someone to confide in. Maybe you can help others. Pass this brochure to your friends. Be a foxhole buddy for someone else. Before I conclude, I want to thank the committee for its efforts to stop fraudulent phone calls. We know the scams don't just happen over the telephone line, but the ease with which a telemarketer can influence others over the phone is unparalleled. Postal inspectors routinely tell consumers, work with their phone service providers to stop robo and other unwanted calls. Thank you for helping to keep fraudulent calls from ever ringing our phones in the first place. I appreciate the opportunity to share with you the work that postal inspectors do to protect veterans and safeguard the American public from fraud.
Inspector Harris, one of the advantages of the Postal Service is there are post offices everywhere in very small communities as well as larger urban areas. So tell us a little bit about how you make sure that this important flyer, which warns veterans about scams, but also cleverly has them fill out the survey so that you can get information and they get more educated. How are they distributed and how do you advertise this program?
Yes, Chairman Collins, thank you for that question. There are over 30,000 post offices across the country. And the post office lobby is incredibly valuable real estate for the community. And as part of our efforts to help spread the word, raise awareness, we have placed these brochures in those lobbies across the country. We did that back in 2018, and we've received many responses from them, and we believe that we have helped not only veterans, but the population in general by highlighting the scams and schemes that are out there. And we hope it served as a call to action to also share with others as we seek to enlist everyone in the fight against fraud by raising the awareness and calling them to help protect themselves and serve others in their community.
Thank you.
Carol, what is because the Postal Service is used so often to be, again, an agent for this, are you finding more? Is it stabilizing? Less? What's the prognosis look for down the road?
The Postal Service has no interest in being an unwitting participant in any of these scams or schemes. As long as there's commerce, there will be scams and schemes. Hence the existence of the inspection service, our partnership with our other federal, state, and local entities. We're going to continue to engage in the fight. It's still alive and well. It evolves. Robocalls and the good work of the Senate to stop the robocalls is an example of a digital evolution. But eventually, they connect to the mail. We move communications and commerce. We move physical goods. And eventually, the conspiracies at times will work their way into our web. That's when we catch them and we engage with our federal partners. We seek a whole-of-government approach.
So are your antennae more alert now, and do you have methods and policies where you're starting to prevent it, or are you generally reacting to a fait accompli?
We use both. We believe strongly in prevention messaging, optimizing the messaging that we give to the public and the American consumer. We also vigorously enforce the laws as they're written. So it's both, and we've been doing both for decades.
Thank you.
I cannot help but think about a somewhat legal scam, I'm just going to say it, that you and I have been working on, and that is the elimination of the Veterans Military Widows Tax. Congress of the United States is allowing that to be diverted and changed, and I appreciate your work so much on helping us, and I'm still hopeful that we can get that in our NDAA this year so we can eliminate that scam once and for all. I would like to kind of focus initially with my DA buddy and Mr. Harris, because I know firsthand these are difficult to track down and prosecute. And technology is changing, and it seems like when I was a prosecutor, and even as a defense lawyer it seemed like that bad guys were always a couple of steps ahead. They were able to work and to do things. So what tools do you need? Are there other tools that you could use right now to both track down and prosecute? I appreciate the idea of deterring and trying to make awareness, and that's wonderful that we're trying to do that. But we're not going to stop this. I mean, it's going to continue. What can we do as a Congress to give you additional tools on both the state and federal level to try to stop these guys in their tracks so that these folks don't last for years before they're apprehended?
Thank you for the question, Senator. The Inspection Service has been in consultation with the Department of Justice to seek an expansion of our administrative subpoena authority to be on par with other Department of Justice federal law enforcement agencies so that we can do more quicker to fight frauds or any of the other 200 federal statutes we enforce to maximize the existence of our resource. So that's something that we're in consultation with the Department of Justice. We believe they're exploring a legislative approach to help us become on par with other DOJ entities there. So that's something that can help with us. Your continued support of our federal law enforcement partners, your efforts to stop robocalls, I applaud. If you continue on that lane, I believe we are making a dent and we're forcing the criminal conspirators to evolve.
Right.
These scams come in many different forms, as you all have shared, one of which was highlighted in Arizona recently, where you have civilians who think they're meeting a military member on a dating app or some other way, and they're serving overseas, and they need some help. And so this is where now civilians are being roped into caring for our military. And Luke Air Force Base has said they're receiving many calls from civilians asking, is this person really in the military? Are they really deployed? And they're having to kind of help sort that out. So somehow now they're tying people's love for our veterans and our military and their willingness to help to scam other civilians. So this trend is going up as well. I don't know if you can share anything on this perspective of how we can, because veterans and military identity are basically being stolen to create these false profiles for that. So any perspectives on that, DA Richardson or Mr. Harris, on what else we can do in order to protect veterans' identities as well that are scamming others? Everybody's getting scammed in this. Continued
expansion of the messaging we're providing, generally speaking, in order to protect PII is it's something we should do. Hearings like this, other community outreach. Identity theft is an international epidemic. Veterans are impacted just like the rest of society. We need to take a societal approach to solving this, a whole of government approach from the government side. But it's also outside of government. It's being that foxhole buddy for someone that needs a friend, having someone to check before you make a financial decision.
Thank you.
Mr. Harris, can the VA do more, in your experience, to protect veterans?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'm incredibly thankful for what the VA has done for me and other veterans over the years. I've been a recipient of care at the VA. I've had multiple procedures. We can always do more. Any government entity can find opportunity to do more, and I appreciate any attention, guidance, and oversight that they're given so that they can optimize the way they watch out for, care for, inform, empower, and inspire veterans.
But I guess I know that you're sympathetic to the VA, and so am I. I'm wondering whether they devote enough resources to making veterans aware, alerting them, and also reporting, doing the kind of work that Mr. Wells has been doing with his colleagues and fellow veterans. Should they be doing more?
I can't speak as to all of their programs. I'm not a subject matter expert on it. I can say they have been a good partner of the inspection service. They have allowed us to extend messaging through their podcasts. They have allowed us to extend messaging on their blog. But I am not a subject matter expert on exactly what they have in place as far as prevention programs, besides the ones with which we have partnered with them.
Well, let me just say, you know, the Postal Service and postal inspectors do great work in this area. They are really unappreciated, I think, in a lot of what they do. People think of law enforcement as the FBI or the DEA, but what I found as U.S. Attorney and then as Attorney General was that the guys who really put these cases together are often the postal inspectors, and they're able to track down some of the perpetrators of these frauds. So I'm hopeful that the VA can take advantage of those skills and make use of them better. My time has expired, but I really appreciate all of you being here today. Thank you very much.
I know the VA has a hotline to deal with identity theft. What else should we be doing with regard to identity theft to help our veterans? Because they should, like my dad, probably would have been an pretty easy target.
I would echo what D.A. Richardson shared, enhanced education and awareness with the target audience and the veteran population. They have an incredible infrastructure with which they can do this. They have face-to-face time through all the other activities that already exist as part of what the Department of Veterans Affairs is doing to care for its veterans. So I'd say the opportunity exists, and I appreciate you asking that question.
My first question, which is for Inspector Harris and D.A. Richardson. Earlier this year, in this committee, I shared the story of Maggie, whose elderly parents in Tucson were robbed of their life savings in a sweepstakes scam. Maggie's father is a 20-year veteran of the United States Air Force living with Alzheimer's, and their family lost much of what they had saved from his military pension. In cases like Maggie's family and Jack's, are there ways to help people financially recover after they've been robbed? Can they get help through their military pension, requiring restitution from the criminals, the tax code? And if there aren't ways for them to get restitution, what barriers prevent veterans from getting some of their life savings back?
The challenge we face in some of the investigations we conduct is that they have been burning through in a typical Ponzi scheme where they've spent what they had from before. So sometimes getting assets to recover, they just don't exist. They've already been expended or distributed. So in those cases, it's challenging. One thing I do feel compelled to share is through AARP's Fraud Watch network, families can reach out and they can get a live person that can help them navigate these difficult circumstances. If they think they have a loved one who's being victimized, they can get help, they can get a live person. And many of the people that work these lines had been involved in a scam or a scheme before. So they have a deep passion, they're not judgmental, and they can help people. They can determine resources, they can help determine which federal law enforcement agencies to refer to, and they can help with level setting of financial status to get someone back on track in life.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Harris, you've done great work with Operation Protect Veterans to raise awareness, investigate these horrible scams. As a veteran and Marine Corps reservist yourself, you know how to communicate effectively about this complicated issue, but could you use some help? Do you think the federal government, like the FTC, could be doing more to listen to experts like you and to disseminate information regarding mail, telemarketing, and internet fraud that target older Americans?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I will always welcome help. Our organization seeks to partner actively. We've worked well with the FTC and other federal entities in the past, and we will continue to do so to the best of our ability. We believe in sharing information, deconflicting cases, using a whole-of-government approach to bring the full bear of federal law enforcement in cooperation with state and local to get the best impact and find all the facts.
What else can Congress and the U.S. government do to verify legitimate veterans charity organizations against fraudulent ones? What role should the federal government play to ensure that the credibility of a veterans charity organization is maintained and that individuals who want to contribute or to volunteer with these organizations can do so with full confidence that they're not being scammed?
I'm aware of the Department of Veterans Affairs list they maintain to determine what is a good charitable organization that can support veterans. I do not know how they adjudicate that list, but I welcome support being given to them as subject matter experts in the arena to make sure that anyone who's interacting with a veteran is not doing so with a nefarious purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you know that I totally agree with you that the VA could do more in this area just because they're a central point of contact for so many veterans. And I know I said I'd asked my last question, but Mr. Harris, just a very quick one for you. This excellent brochure that the Postal Service Inspection Service has collaborated with AARP on, is this also, in addition to being in post office lobbies, is it also at VA clinics and hospitals and CBOCs, community veterans centers?
Thank you for that question, Chairman Collins. We've been in consultation with the Department of Veterans Affairs and seeking to get distribution through their network. To date, we haven't.
Well, that's something that I can assure you we'll follow up on because a lot of veterans have contact with the VA and with community-based clinics, and this would be a great publication for them to pick up. So thank you for your good work. Operation Protect Veterans seeks to prevent scams through education. Vet to Vet in Maine uses camaraderie between veterans as a way to fight back. Veterans like Mr. Foreman, who are also on the lookout for their fellow veterans, and Inspector Harris as well, also play an important role. And of course, there's no substitute for the kind of persistence that DA Richardson and his staff demonstrated in tracking down and prosecuting these criminals. Like Senator Casey, I want the VA to step up its game as well and assist us in protecting our veterans. I am very appreciative of your all being here today. As the daughter of a World War II veteran who was wounded twice in the Battle of the Bulge, this is an issue that matters greatly to me as well, and I'm sure we'll continue our efforts to combat it, as I know our witnesses will. So thank you all for being here. This hearing is now adjourned.